Can you imagine being the father of that young skater, who, with her mother, both dead, and hearing the president ranting and raving about the policies of the previous presidents, rather than actually just simply on the day hoping that the bodies are going to be found and empathising with the emergency workers who are trying to find them.
Let's start with Donald Trump. And was he out of line for suggesting, at the moment that he did, that diversity, equality and inclusion schemes could be behind the Washington plane crash tragedy? With his accusatory tone hitting out at both Obama and Biden too soon after confirming there are likely no survivors, he linked diversity and inclusion policies to the crash.
Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan.
Nikki, I wonder how you felt listening to that press conference yesterday. I think quite a lot of people were just stunned at how honest he was being about how he felt, and how that came across as many people have said, disrespectful when you were considering that the search and rescue operation ongoing as he was speaking, attributing blame.
I mean, I think that in terms of disrespectful, that's exactly the right word, given that obviously the loved ones, family and friends of those who'd sadly, tragically died on board are still, even just hearing the news. And I think that the timing to go from this is the coverage on this morning, the first half of the press conference where President Trump, I think, was more sympathetic to this extraordinary political decision, actually, that here is the problem. And of course, it made it all about him. That's the story now that we are talking about. And the trouble is that's exactly what he wants. He wants it all to be about him all the time. And so the fact that we're even having this debate is sort of slightly frustrating, because actually what we should be talking about, I suppose, firstly is what went so terribly wrong, and who's lost their lives, and also the bravery of the rescuers who had to work in the cold and the dark for hours and hours and hours. And then, of course, there will be an understanding, an investigation, I suppose, of exactly how we got there. So to leap from A to Z, or A to Z if I'm American, so quickly is absolutely unprecedented. But interesting listening to the comments coming in, I think you've had this morning, because I get the sense, and I haven't listened to the whole show, that there's been quite a mixture of, yes, it's terrible, but actually there is maybe something in what he said. So I don't think we're going to come on and talk about this point about disruptive politics and what's needed to counter the sort of so-called populism. And I think, as ever, what we can't do is just completely dismiss what he said, but the timing was wrong.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you've mentioned, Nikki. People are saying, actually, he's pulled on something that maybe has some weight to it. And some people messaging in saying, actually, it was refreshing to hear how he actually felt, rather than sort of any sort of, PR spin on any of it. And maybe some Republicans who were talking to us earlier in the programme said, well, that was Donald Trump demonstrating his anger. Jack, when leaders have to deal with tragedies like this, how important is it, every single word that you say?
Well, I think it says a lot about your character, to be honest. And I think America deserved better yesterday, and the families deserve better. I was in a number of these situations back when I was First Minister, and occasionally in other roles as well. I remember the stock line factory explosion in Glasgow in 2004, where we ultimately did take legal action against the company. The health and safety executive were also at fault. And the law was ultimately changed in corporate manslaughter. But on the day, all our thoughts were with the families of those who had died or who were in hospital. And they would never have thought of talking about the company or the HSE. Callum will remember the South Uist tragedy exactly 20 years ago in January 2005. when I happened to be in the Western Isles shortly afterwards and went to see the family. No press, no PR around that visit. An empathetic visit to a family that had lost five lives. And I was also with Tony Blair the day that the London bombing took place at the G8, when we were meeting the Chinese Premier and Vice Premier, and his officials came into the room to tell him that there had been a bomb in London and he had to go and deal with it. And the immediate reaction was to go and deal with it, to think about the people that were injured or had died, to think about those that were working on the scene, and to make sure there wasn't anything else going to happen later in the day, not to have a press conference and to start commenting on what might be potential failings. And I think this is the problem. I think Trump started the press conference yesterday with the right tone, but then he went into politics. He didn't say, we will look into this, and if there was a reason, whether it was cutbacks in staff or it was DEI policies, we will deal with that. I give you my assurance as president that if that is the reason, we will deal with it. But today we're thinking about the people that are out there searching for bodies in the river. And I think you got that part of it just completely wrong. And America does deserve better.
What do you think happened
all
there,
its politicians,
Jack?
frankly, but from the president on a day like that.
Do you imagine, sort of, from what might have happened behind the scenes, that was what they were discussed and said, right, we're going to go out and we're going to share our sympathies? I'm sure he believes, absolute horror of what's happened. Those 67 people have lost their lives. And then do you think he sort of just started freewheeling and started saying what was in his mind?
I think part of the problem with leaders, and we've seen a few of them, it's not just an issue with President Trump, it's an issue with a number of leaders, particularly, I think, a particular problem in the Western world, I think, where there's no internal challenge whatsoever, and people don't question what the leader is about to do or has at the top of their mind as they wander into a press conference and then start mouthing off. And I think that's why you need strong people around about you to say, wait a minute, just slow down. You can say this tomorrow. You don't need to say it today. And I think that's part of the problem with having a sort of court around you in the old sense, not in the sense of a modern court, but a sense of the old royal court where people just get down on their hands and knees and bow to you and agree with whatever you're going to do. And I do think, can you imagine being the father of that young skater who, with her mother, both dead, and hearing the president ranting and raving about the policies of the previous presidents, rather than actually just simply on the day hoping that the bodies are going to be found and empathising with the emergency workers who are trying to find them.
And Lisa,
you just can't imagine how that would make you feel.
You can't. You've only just heard the news. You'd expect that the families would have been briefed beforehand, but everyone has now found out. We're not expecting there to be any survivors. And then so quickly after, the blame game starts. Lisa says, even if one accepts there may be a kernel of truth in what the president said, his job yesterday was to soothe and unite the nation, offer reassurance, not to go off on a rant. In that, he failed.
Helen in High Peak says, I'm not sure why we are applying our cultural sensitivities when it's a US government and culture. It is fact that the air traffic control was understaffed. Certainly that's what's being reported in US media overnight and this morning. It is fact, she says, that recruitment policies have changed to positively encourage DEI recruiting. And it is fact that Trump is outspoken. Stop judging him by British norms. I'd much rather have acknowledgement that authorities have messed up. Look at what happened following the information void in Southport, says Helen. Steph says, no one knows what caused this yet. They must be given the chance to investigate and reach a conclusion without the Commander-in-Chief unhelpfully speculating after the tragedy. Which I think this is a lot. There seems to be some sort of consensus around timing, I think, but actually there's two ways to go on that, where some of you are quite eager that a leader like President Trump emerges immediately to offer his take. And actually, Nikki, is there anything in that he is leading? And while, as Helen was saying there, maybe it's unpalatable or whatever, the way he said it or something, but I'm just trying to get at the fact he has been the president in that moment. He has acknowledged the tragedy and he is expressing his view. Isn't that what we're all craving from politicians?
Well, I think there's something in that. I think what people say that they want is so-called authenticity.
Yeah.
Now, I suspect actually what we saw at that press conference is authentic Trump, and some people are going to like that, and some people are going to loathe it and find it deeply uncomfortable and not what they wanted to hear at all. But I think, yeah, you're. I mean, as Jack said, when something like this happens on your watch, as a Secretary of State, as the First Minister, as a Prime Minister, the first thing obviously to do is to express sympathies, and most of us would stop then. But the fact that he went on further, for some people will be, as you say, will resonate, and they'll say, well, yes, actually, there is something in what he says, and good on him for perhaps saying how he felt. So that's why I think you can't dismiss it. But I mean, I think we're certainly Jack and I think are agreeing that the timing, we feel the timing is wrong. And of course, the thing about jumping to conclusions is that you just never quite know where the investigations are going to go.
Yeah, that's the thing. And it was also interesting, I think, the tension that now does seem to exist between him and the official agencies, because Jennifer Homendy, who is from the National Transport Safety Board, said, "We do not know enough facts to be able to rule in or out human factor or mechanical factors, I think, or environmental factors are the three things they'll look at." And I just thought that was interesting, because actually injecting tension between the president and the federal agencies that are responsible here is potentially not that helpful in terms of getting to the bottom of what's going on here.